going. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight, ladies. Happy Wednesday night, everyone. We're going to kick off tonight with a super special guest speaker, Carol Covino. Carol owns her own coaching company, and she's coming in tonight to talk with us about women's hormones and perimenopausal hormones. It's been a really hot topic in the group lately, so I'm super excited to have Carol here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Clarissa.
Turn it over to you for a moment now.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Clarissa. I've been really looking forward to this and speaking with the community. I've been coaching now for over 10 years. I've probably worked with well over 1,000 women at this point. I started out in group fitness and teaching yoga. From there, I was seeing changes in my body I didn't like due to menopause. And I decided to do a bodybuilding show in order to get myself from point A to point Z. I thought, okay, I love the way the ladies look on stage for figure and bikini. I want that look. Didn't know how to get it. So set out on that journey to change my body through nutrition, exercise, and then that was really the beginning of launching my coaching career. Because then women came and said, well, how did you do it? How did you do it at age 50?
Right. No, that's amazing. So you did your first show at 50.
Yes.
That's
yes.
amazing.
I did. And I had always wanted to be a bodybuilder. I would look at the magazines back in the day, but I thought, I just didn't think it was possible for me. And I lacked the confidence. I didn't think I could put on that kind of muscle. So it's really been an incredible journey. I've learned so much, and working with women, it's just been such a blessing.
I agree with that 1,000%. It really, really is. It's such a great place to be in, and to know that you can help someone overcome, honestly, a lot of the same things that that we've gone through. It feels good.
Yes, absolutely. And I really got into the hormone piece of this because as I began working with women, I noticed that the conventional wisdom just wasn't working. The old eat less, exercise more, even the traditional bodybuilding training that I had had seemed not to work in certain situations. And that's when I began to really go down that rabbit hole, dig, learn as much as I could, and reflecting back on my own journey, I can really see where knowing what I know now in my 40s, I'm now 61, having that knowledge then would have made such a difference.
Oh, and prep? Yeah, absolutely. So when you were doing your show at 50, did you find that it was hard to get through prep?
It was, because I didn't know anything started out. Even though I was teaching group fitness, my nutrition knowledge was so very basic. And so I had no idea. I thought, what are these women eating to look this way? And I hired a coach. She handed me a meal plan. Trouble with the meal plan, it was fine. It got results. I didn't understand the why. Why were these foods on the plan? Why the quantity? I didn't understand. And then going cold turkey, because I was eating processed food, I was eating sugar, I was eating gluten, dairy, all of the things, to just suddenly go from that to clean eating was tough. It was a mental battle, a mental and a physical battle.
I'm sure it was. That's kind of crazy. But it did get results, but like you said, they weren't sustainable. So with what you just said, you turned 60, 61.
61. Just had a birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's amazing. So now that you've learned what you've learned, how do you find is, if you had one piece of advice to give to women that are going through menopause, what is that? What would be the most important piece?
I really feel women need to be educated on this and not silent. So when I went through menopause, nobody was talking about this. I was raised in a household where it was called the change. I would see my mom cry. I knew she was suffering, and I thought, oh, I don't want any part of that change. So when I was going through perimenopause, those years leading up to menopause, and I was making that transition, I was in a state of denial. There was a lot of shame around it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about the changes I was experiencing, the hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, brain fog. all of the things, not sleeping. I wasn't sleeping at all until I made this transition, and then eventually got help with a very good hormone specialist. But the piece of advice that I would give is to really educate yourself. Don't be silent, because this can be such an amazing part of your life. When I turned 50 and I made the changes that I did to my health, and I really started to get results, it just opened up a whole world for me. It really gave me confidence that I had never had in my life. I'd always been just this complete introvert and lacked self-confidence. And the 50s can be such an amazing decade. Going through menopause is a freeing experience if we have our health, if we do the right things. And we can only do those things when we're educated and we understand what's happening to our body, why, and what we can do to optimize our health.
Right. No, that's so very, very true. And like you said, it's something that's not talked about. And even if you go to like a regular doctor, they still don't talk about it. They're just like, oh, it's
Mm-mm.
normal, just deal with it. Or, for instance, we had a client that her doctor just gave her a pill to help her deal with the symptoms, but it wasn't actually helping anything. And then getting off of that medication was hard in itself.
It is. They tend to want to give, it's interesting because I see this with my clients. The doctors will give them birth control, even though they're entering menopause, anti-anxiety medication, sometimes a sleep medication, and an antidepressant. And it's just throwing pharmaceuticals at this rather than looking at the underlying root cause, what's going on. And menopause is normal. It's not something we should be ashamed of. It's normal, but suffering is optional. We don't have to suffer. But I do believe the medical community, and nothing against the medical community. I have 2 kids going into that field, a daughter getting ready to graduate and apply to PA school. So I love our doctors, love our nurses, but there's definitely flaws in the system. They're not taught anything about hormones. And we assume, okay, we go to an OBGYN, they're going to know, but they don't know. They don't have the knowledge.
No, agreed. And then compound that with they don't have the knowledge on nutrition because they just don't have the time to learn
It's
that.
true.
And those are the 2 most important pieces of this space of life. So how can a regular doctor help you? They really, unless you're really lucky, they're not going to be able to.
That's true. I was very fortunate to find a CNP here in Albuquerque who this has been her life's work, working with hormones and primarily women, and women in my age group are 40 and up. And I was just extremely blessed to find her because it made a difference. Now I had made the lifestyle changes, and I always tell my ladies, they say, well, should I get hormone replacement therapy? And I said, really address your lifestyle first, then discuss that with your practitioner.
Right. No, that's exactly what we do too. Um, so when we go through the changes of perimenopause, do you want to kind of outline what that looks like hormonally so that maybe they can understand a little better?
Absolutely. I've heard it described as reverse puberty, and I think that that is the absolute best description. And I did not know what was happening to me. I remember feeling I'm abnormal. There's something
Mhm.
wrong with me. The brain fog, the anxiety, all of a sudden just being depressed for no reason, feelings of doom. And what's happening is really starting at age 35, we'll skip an ovulatory cycle, which then causes the estrogen to be higher in relation to the progesterone. So that's kind of the kickoff of the hormones changing. Then when we get into perimenopause, somewhere in our 40s, it's going to vary by each woman. You've got this seesaw going on between estrogen and progesterone. So 1 month, one could be higher in relationship to the other. Typically, it's estrogen dominance. Progesterone will drop, and progesterone is our calming hormone. It calms us down, it helps us sleep. And I always describe estrogen and progesterone as 2 sisters on a seesaw, keeping that
Mhm.
balance, with estrogen being the adventuresome sister and progesterone being, hey, calm down, let's play it safe, let's stay home tonight. But when progesterone goes, that anxiety goes up. Then we begin to have a problem with cortisol, which is the fight or flight hormone, which we need to survive. but we start to be very vulnerable to stress. In turn, cortisol raises blood sugar levels, and it also halts insulin. It keeps insulin from coming in and doing its job. So then we've got a real problem. We've got high blood glucose or blood sugar regulation. We're dealing with stress, and insulin can't do its job properly. So if we don't make nutritional changes, exercise changes, sleep and stress changes, we can become insulin resistant. That is a very real possibility, and it happens. And as we go into menopause, of course, with the drop of everything, now estrogen's dropping, progesterone, testosterone. So we're losing muscle, and we're losing the protection of estrogen, which protects our bone and protects our muscle and keeps us from losing muscle. So then there begins to be this problem of more adipose fat tissue, lower muscle mass, high blood sugar levels that aren't regulated, cortisol that's dysregulated. And it sounds like a dooming, a dooming picture, but when we do the right things, and it's really not one thing, and I think women look for one thing, but when we dial in the nutrition, dial in the right kind of exercise, the right amount, the right type, and of course, strength training, huge. And then we address sleep and stress. And I see that a lot of perimenopausal women, they're not sleeping. They're simply not sleeping, and that's very detrimental.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they don't really think anything of that. I mean, it's something that's either been a long-term problem or it's something that's gradually just kind of built, and they're like, I just don't sleep good. And they'll list, 5,000 reasons why they're not sleeping good, but I know why they're not sleeping good. And so it's always like a work in progress to continually try to take small steps to improve the sleep.
Oh, and you hit it on the nose, Clarissa, because I always think of a plane. You don't nosedive a plane down, and sleep is like that. You drop down, and it's layers, and it's addressing, everything from those cortisol levels to how close you eat to bedtime, what did you eat, the stress levels, having a nighttime routine, getting rid of the electronics, which I've been guilty of that. When you run an online business, you're on it all the time.
I know. Well, and I think a lot of people, though, they unwind with TV, and that's not helping their sleep.
Yeah, that blue light, because it's messing up the circadian rhythms. It's giving the signal that it's daytime, let's get up and do things. And then cortisol rises, and we get that awakening response in the middle of the night.
Right. Yeah, for sure. There was something else you said that I want to return to, but it slipped out of my mind. It'll come back. But when you're working with these perimenopausal women, I'm assuming that the first thing that you're working on is something that is a small step, right? We're not coming in and changing everything like you did with that meal plan, your first meal plan. And that's how we coach too, is like small steps that we can always gradually build on. In your experience with the perimenopausal women, what would be your choice of the most important foundational step, like to lay that ground foundation?
It is a toss up between the sleep, because I think that is, I have modules in a program that's called Fit and Fierce, and I used to have sleep as one of the last modules. And I'm like, what am I doing? That needs to be one of the first things that we work on. But the other thing is taking those small nutritional steps. So one that I like ladies to do is get rid of the seed oils, the canola oil, the cottonseed oil, all soybean oil, corn oil, all of those seed oils that are such poor sources of fat and fuel. And we have mitochondria. These are the powerhouses of our cells, and they need energy. And these oils are toxic. They're heated to toxic levels. They're very poor sources of energy. So they increase cravings. They lower down your energy level. You have less energy and motivation. So just that one step alone, just going to your pantry, okay, look for those seed oils, or being at Whole Foods or Smith's and reading those labels and just making that small change.
Yeah, no, that could go a long ways for sure. Yeah, I think that having sleep as a foundation is perfect though. But I remembered my other question. So generally when we're going through perimenopause, that huge problem that we have with sleep is generally related to the reduction in progesterone. So
Mhm.
if someone has gone through the appropriate steps and they have their bedtime routine and they're not doing screens and you know, all of those pieces are in place, they're eating when they're supposed to be, they're not over exercising, and sleep is still horrible, what would you suggest that they do at that point?
There are some supplements such as L-theanine, GABA. Of course, you want to talk to your practitioner, make sure that you're not taking something such as an antidepressant that could clash with that. Melatonin, I know there's so much mixed information out there, but the information that I've been getting lately is that if you're getting a really good source, you know, you're not just going to Walmart and buying whatever, that can be so helpful because it drops off at age 40. It's non-existent at my age. And so I do use melatonin, I use L-theanine, GABA. I have a nighttime routine that's very, very big for me that sends that message. Having the room very dark is important, quiet, dark. Blue light glasses can help as you move through the evening, just to have them on so that you're not getting that blue light that sends the wrong signals. And then setting those circadian rhythms in the morning by stepping outside and getting that sunlight is very important, can make a big difference for sleep. It sounds funny that getting
Mhm.
up in the morning and going outside would make a difference at night, but the whole idea is to set those circadian rhythms or reset them.
Right. Yes, that can help tremendously. And that helps when you do that with the sunlight too. That can also help with the cortisol production to bring that back.
Yes, yes. And I think, I know you hit on something with the cortisol. I think it really is useful to know our levels, to do
Mhm.
some kind of testing, especially on that cortisol, because there's so many things. I've had the situation where my cortisol is low in the morning when it's supposed to be high, high at night and in the afternoon. And supplementation and adaptogens can really help with that too. So knowing those levels can make a difference.
Yeah, no, that's true. So that could be a good question. With the cortisol testing, I know you can get like there's several different tests you can just order yourself online, and that's something that you can treat fairly easily through lifestyle things and nutrition and you know, like we talked about with the sunlight. But how often would you recommend retesting that?
If they're really dysregulated, I would say 6 months, you know, of making those lifestyle changes, maybe some supplementation. If you're working with a functional medicine practitioner, they're going to have knowledge on this. You know, give your body, I know when I made some changes and began some supplementation in HRT, it was a good 6 months
Mhm,
before I felt things regulate in my body.
mhm.
And I think that's probably a good, you know, get that baseline and then retest. And then from there, you don't need to be testing every 6 months. I would do it annually.
Yeah, no, exactly. So then it just kind of becomes like one of the other standard hormones that they test once a year.
Yes, yes. And I'm a fan of the Dutch test.
Mhm.
Just completed one myself, and I did it in conjunction with a gut test. And those two tests together really give a pretty accurate roadmap to what's happening in your body. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, they really do. We haven't graduated to the Dutch test yet, but we have a gut test that we use with all of our clients right when they come in the door. And that way we can start addressing those things right away. It's so useful and it saves so much time.
Yes, gut health is huge because sometimes when someone has weight loss resistance and their body's not responding, that can be the issue where there's a problem with the microbiome. There's
Mhm.
a problem with food sensitivities, which past the age 40, that's another thing we become more prone to are those food sensitivities.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And some of that is the someone is here, but they can't hear us. I wonder why.
Uh-oh.
Honestly, it looks like it is frozen on Facebook. I
Oh no.
so I think the recording should be fine, and I'll repost that in the group. If you're on Facebook and you can hear us, if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat because I can see that. But yeah, volume's all up on my end. That really does.
Mhm. -2.
Well
Let's
done.
double check.
All right. Now I've completely lost my train of thought. Let's see. I know we had some comments here inside of Zoom. Tressos, what about sesame oil or peanut oil?
Peanut oil, peanuts can be inflammatory. So that can definitely be an issue, especially for some people if they're sensitive to that. Sesame oil in small amounts. I'm a fan of avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, but now we do have to be careful because I'm hearing that those things are being cut with cheaper seed oils by the manufacturers.
Really? I hadn't heard that.
Yes, yes.
Now we need verified oil. Oh my
I
God.
know, I know. It's endless. Any way that, because it's less expensive. So any way
Right.
they can get by with this stuff, the canola oil, all of that is very inexpensive. So
Mhm.
they want to cut it. I know I get my olive oil actually from the olive oil club. It sounds funny, but I'm in a club and it
Okay.
comes from Greece and
Oh,
all over the
nice.
world.
Okay. I like the store we have here. I know most of the people on the call aren't from here, but there's a store in Old Town that does the olive oil. It's always infused with different herbs and they
Oh,
mention
yes.
some of them. And then we have another little shop over here in it's like on Corrales, but it's the same kind of thing. So I enjoy going there. What about coconut oil? I know what my feelings are on coconut.
Yes, I believe coconut oil is a good clean oil to have in the diet.
Mhm.
Most definitely, there's a lot of benefits. In fact, I was just listening to a podcast on bone health, interestingly enough, and this gentleman is an expert in bone health, and not just for women, but for everyone. And he was talking about the benefits of coconut oil.
Interesting. I wonder, I can you possibly send that to me? That would be very interesting.
I will. I will. It's an interesting podcast. He was talking about how when we don't have what we need, we leach it from our bones. So for
Yeah.
instance, when someone has celiac, they're very prone to
Mm,
having poor bone density because their body just takes what it needs um, from the bones.
right. Yeah, no, it always does. Our body's job is to keep us alive. That's its only job. And so it'll
I
do
know.
whatever it has to do to keep us alive.
That's so true.
All right. Tressa says, of course they would cut what's good for you. And they also have an oil and vinegar family owned shop near her. Cool.
Yeah. The thing is for it to be pure because it sits on the shelves of the store and it's exposed to light and then gets oxidized, and that's not such a good thing.
True. Very true. Yeah. So small batches are good. Um, okay, so we've done sleep and top supplements for sleep, some nutrition foundations, the hormones, how they kind of decrease. Anything else that we're missing?
I would say that stress piece is huge. And of course, it ties in with the sleep. But
Mhm.
stress does damage the gut. It causes problems to gut health. And of course, it can create inflammation. So anything that creates inflammation in our body, and that alone is a topic because we
Mhm.
are more prone to that past age 40, that vulnerability. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in my early 50s, after I had changed my lifestyle. But I look back and I realized I was having the symptoms in my mid 40s to late 40s
Oh,
before I had changed things. And I realized I was very sensitive to dairy, very sensitive to gluten. I had a sweet tooth like crazy. And then I would go run it off. I was a marathon runner. So all of this oxidative stress, and I'm not saying running is bad, but I would use it to control my weight, use it to,
mhm.
okay, I ate this amount of calories. Now I'm going to go run them off with 20 miles and only having coffee and some sugary muffin.
Mhm.
And I created that inflammatory environment. And that is the precursor to many chronic illnesses. So even though I changed my lifestyle, that trigger had been pulled. that, and when I say trigger, you have these genetics, but then environment pulls the trigger, epigenetics. And so I feel stress, inflammation are definitely two areas that we should be looking at. And of course, that's going to be largely linked to the nutrition.
Right. Yes, 1000%. And you're absolutely right. We have done entire trainings, very long ones on just reducing stress and reducing inflammation, because it is so very important. But I think that it becomes of even more importance as you're going through perimenopause, because that hormone decline is another stress on your body. And at some point, your body gets to a place, and how much can it take?
That's true. It's that oxidative load, that load on the mitochondria, and we don't want that damage to the mitochondria. We all have damage by the time we're age 40. Those little powerhouses in the cells have been damaged. And it's a thing because once again, this determines how we age, when we age. It's very much linked to disease. So doing everything we can to protect that. And we're back to the sleep and the stress piece again. Sleep is a big part of that because we clean house when we sleep, when we're fasting, when we're not we're in rest mode, we're not eating, we're not up and about. That's the time that the brain takes out the trash. The cells are recycled. And it's so important. If we're not going into deep sleep, if we're not having a full night's sleep, we're putting ourselves at risk.
Right. No, absolutely, 1000%. For someone that sleeps, they do sleep, a decent amount of time, but it isn't quality sleep. What is something you feel that they could do to improve that?
I would focus on that deep sleep. And a lot of times that's affected by snacking in the evening. And no judgment, because I did, believe me, everything wrong you could possibly do in my 40s, everything. I made all of the mistakes. So no judgment here, but eating close to bed and then laying down in bed and the cortisol is elevated, insulin's having to come in, and it's giving your body the message not to go into deep sleep. And we typically do that first. I wear an Aura ring, and I notice that that deep sleep often comes at the beginning of the night, right away. That's what I drop into. So you figure if you're eating close to bed, uh, you're damaging, well, not damaging, but you're affecting that deep sleep.
Right. No, that's true. That's a good point. I forgot that the eating does that. And then the Aura ring freaks out.
And alcohol, the glass, the wine down before bed, which the past 2 years, I think, really affected women in that area. And of course, that's going to affect the deep sleep and the quality of sleep, the REM sleep.
Absolutely. All right. Um, I don't see any other questions. Nothing else came through on Facebook. Cressida says sleep for me is amazing. So that's fantastic. I'm glad you're sleeping well. Drinking green tea an hour before bed. Green tea is pretty high in caffeine. Is it an uncaffeinated kind? Generally when we recommend, because we will recommend tea before bed quite a bit. It is a good way to unwind, but we generally recommend an herbal blend. That way there's not any caffeine.
Yes, I'm the same way. I make sure there's no caffeine, and I have herbal teas that I will sometimes use just to calm, especially in the winter, just to kind of calm myself down and calm my body and my mind. It's very helpful. Yeah, I'm a fan of green tea, just not at night.
Not at night. Yeah, me too. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap things up, not detain you for any longer tonight. I'm not seeing any other questions come in. Let me check Facebook one more time. No, nothing there. But thank you so much for spending part of your night with us tonight, Carol, and to come in and chat with us about one of our favoriteest topics in the whole world.
Thank you for having me, Clarissa. I've really enjoyed it, and it's an honor to be on with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'm sure we'll catch up with each other soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank